I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakeims.
All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media, coming at you with another episode of Pat's Daily, brought to you by our good friends at PrizePicks and Game Time. Today, to preview the Patriots-Dolphins matchup coming up this weekend, the first time the Patriots have been favored in a game this season. A little bit of positive news there for Pats fans. Tyler, I'm sorry. I am joined by friend of the show, Tyler DeSena. Dude, you have been doing a great job putting into perspective what exactly is going on with the Dolphins. So I'm excited to catch up, see what's going on with two teams who are not in the best place right now. Might not be a fun game this weekend, but of course we are going to have to go through it. So you're going to help us prepare and get an idea of what to expect. But before we get into all of that, first off, buddy, how are you doing? And welcome back to the show.
I thank you so much for having me, of course. When it comes to like how I'm doing, talking to you about this matchup always was going to be exciting, but the fact that it is where these two teams are, where we're talking again, if you would have told me that this was a matchup a month ago that the Patriots would be favored in or even considered, a real possibility to come into to go win without even playing their rookie quarterback at this point, I would have told you that, a lot of bad things would have had to transpire. And that's where it feels like we are with the Dolphins. And I know that on the Patriots end as well, there's a lot of things that aren't trending in the right direction. These two teams are probably a lot more similar than we thought they would be, August or September even.
Yeah, man, the injuries have been brutal for the Patriots. That's really been the biggest thing. Now, there's a lot going wrong. When you're 1-3, usually it's not one or two things, obviously. But we're going to start off by catching each other up on where each team is at this point. So the Patriots actually released their injury report today. I'm going to pull that up on my end real quick. So Marcus Jones was added, actually. He was limited with a groin injury. Jabril Peppers was upgraded to limited after not being at practice yesterday. He has a shoulder, and Jaheim Bell is a full participant. He's dealing with a neck injury, but, Jaheim's only played one snap this season, so that's not really huge. And then on the Patriots offensive line front, that's been huge. They obviously are going to lose David Andrews for the season, according to Ian Rappaport, due to a shoulder injury, which I'm pretty sure he'd been playing through for a while. Because when you look at the tape, there was no play. Usually when a guy gets hurt, just reflexively, they'll kind of pay some attention to what it is. Never saw that. Nick Leverett, who's the center right now, he was rotating in with the starters during practices. So I was kind of wondering what was going on there. David Andrews also, clearly a warrior, but he didn't seem like he was playing to the same caliber. So he's done for the season. So now the offensive line, based on today's practice, looks like it's going to be Fadarian Lowe at left tackle, Michael Jordan back at left guard. He was dealing with an ankle injury. Then in the middle, once again, Nick Leverett, right guard. It's actually might be either Layden Robinson or Sidy Sow. That's going to be pretty interesting. I think Layden Robinson's banged up right now. He's got an ankle and a wrist. And then at right tackle, stalwart Mike Nwenu. You'd rather have him at guard, but he's going to be at tackle because they just don't have great depth there. So that's kind of the injury update for the Patriots. Quarterback Jacoby Brissett hasn't been great. Last Sunday had 5 turnover-worthy plays. As a backup who really isn't giving you many big-time throws, although he did have his first to Jalen Polk last week. So Patriots offense really just needs to stop hurting itself with the turnovers from Andre Stevenson. Fumbled 4 games in a row, lost his second fumble in a row. Gerard Mayo said there's a chance he's actually benched for Antonio Gibson, so it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that. Then defensively, Kyle Duggar looks like he might miss some time, and Jabril Peppers, like I mentioned, is banged up. Last week, we saw Jalen Hawkins and Del Pettis play a lot. Both guys looked like they were involved somehow in miscommunications. Not sure if they were responsible necessarily, but with the Dolphins' deep passing game, Patriots playing more quarters than usual, those guys are going to be huge. And then the defensive line, pass rush hasn't really been great. Joshua Uche has been more disciplined as a pass rusher, not so much as a run defender, but he had 1 pressure last week. Obviously not a great sign. And Keon White killing it on the inside, but contain was an issue for him early on. He figured that out. Patriots defense really just needs to do a better job getting pressure on the quarterback, communication on the back end. And offensively, I think they need to run the game 30 times in this one because the offensive line, when you talk about pass protection, it's just not easy when you have a different lineup every single week. So that's where the Patriots are at, Tyler. I know I threw a lot at you, kind of catching everybody else up on what's going on in this game as well. But now it is your turn. Let us know where the Dolphins stand heading into week 5.
Great. This is so exciting to see where this Dolphins team is. But yeah, it's a lot of a similar story with injuries. Obviously, Tua out until I believe at least week 8. The offense is full of injuries right now. There are a lot of guys that are just limited participants, but it looks like most of them are going to be able to play Sunday. So, and it should be the first game for Odell Beckham Jr. He's been a participant these last 2 weeks. They initiated his return window, so it looks like he's going to play. But as for the defense, that's kind of where the Dolphins have been at their best. They've been the best defense in the NFL when it comes to getting teams off the field on third down, but now they're potentially losing 2 guys. Jordan Poyer did not participate in practice either Wednesday or Thursday, and Jalen Phillips has now been announced that he's out for the season in an edge group that has already been really, really depleted. I mean, you're going to be looking at Emmanuel Ogbah, potentially working Deshaun Hand out there, Mo Camara, and Chop Robinson probably getting a bulk of the snaps. And those are guys who have been shaky at best when it comes to how Miami has tried to especially defend the run when it comes to setting that edge. They've had some issues out there, even with the guys that they do have, having to go to Chop Robinson, who really at this point is like a one-move kind of pass rush specialist, and him having to see the field potentially for most of the game. That's where the big weakness is for this team right now.
All right. Well, clearly not looking great for either one of these teams heading into the game, but the game must be played. So we are going to get into the key matchups. But before I do, quick word from our friends over at PrizePicks. Be right back.
PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers, and all you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you will watch the winnings roll in. For one more weekend, 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you a win on PrizePicks. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win for your lineup, so make sure to put that in to every lineup to watch those winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with injury insurance as well, which the way the NFL is going right now, you're going to want injury insurance, and you get that with PrizePicks. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all those withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, the money just comes in. So make sure you download the PrizePicks apps today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game.
All right, Tyler, you're up first. What is your first key matchup heading into Patriots Dolphins?
I had a lot that kind of came to mind because the way the Dolphins have played over the last 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks without Tua, not exactly how you would expect them to play. They're running a lot of the same stuff they would run for Tua. There isn't as much running up the middle, which Miami's actually been very effective at in comparison to the league. They've been trying to get a lot going on the edge. And when your receivers that are trying to block out there are all under the height of like 5'9", 5'10", sometimes it's a little difficult out there. So my first thing would be, I want to see Miami run up the middle more. And I think going with these, like looking at the Patriots interior defensive line, guys like Devon Godshaw, Keon White, if you have to have that guy, have him setting an edge. I want to see what Miami up front looks like up against this Patriots front, because obviously Keon White's had a really good start to the season pass rush wise, but like you said, there were some edge setting concerns. And then those second level linebackers, I know that you've got a familiar face there in Raekwon McMillan, trying to get Miami up the middle and get those kind of plays, I feel like could further get the edge game going because of the fact that Miami has Tyler Huntley, who's starting at quarterback. So running some of that zone read style stuff, you're going to probably try to get it between the tackles and then have him pull a couple outside. I would love to see that be the basis for Miami's outside run game rather than trying to get to more of these crack tosses that we've kind of seen the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and actually, it's going to be tough going inside because Devon Godshaw, I actually just saw this before the show, only Cameron Hayward has more run stops. That dude has been on a tear, especially the last 2 weeks. And then Eric Johnson, he's a nose tackle they claimed on waivers from the Colts after roster cuts. He looked way better against the 49ers than he actually did the week before because, the Colts are all about getting upfield. Basically, you're trying to stop the run on the way to the quarterback. He was so used to that when they put him against the Jets, there were times where he just shot upfield and completely abandoned his gap. And the coaches were saying, it's not really his fault. He's still getting used to our system because the Patriots try to be gap sound and disciplined, and they're more two-gappers. He did a great job, and that freed up Devon Godshaw to play more of a defensive end role in their odd front. So that's going to be tough. Although Daniel Qualley has been pretty solid, but like you mentioned, if Keon White, especially if he's inside, he may be kind of vulnerable. And when you look at where the Dolphins actually had success running the ball last year compared to where they had success compared to how the Patriots struggled last week when they did, it was running those really long developing outside plays towards Tavai, attacking Dietrich Wise on more of the downhill stuff. So I think if they do try to go downhill, it's probably going to be trying to combo Dietrich Wise. Then those second level defenders are really going to have to make sure that they do their jobs, obviously, and contain the run. So actually my key matchup was the Dolphins defensive line, or the Patriots defensive line, versus the Dolphins offensive line. We kind of touched on all the run game stuff, but for me, the big thing is going to be contained. Because Tyler Huntley, we know, is a really athletic quarterback. I know he only scrambled twice last week, and both of those were up the middle. But the Patriots' edge contain has been pretty shaky. Now, like I mentioned, they got it together against Brock Purdy, but every single week this season, we have seen that come up as an issue, and they haven't faced anybody who's remotely as athletic as Tyler Huntley. So I want to see Keon White, Joshua Uche. I want to make, and even Dietrich Wise at times, to be honest, if they're going to try to use line games to create some kind of scheme pressure, need to make sure that the guy who's supposed to set the edge knows that he's supposed to do it and then does an effective job, because I really think this game is all going to be about the line of scrimmage because of the quarterback situations on both sides. And if the Patriots are just letting Tyler Huntley run wild or they're not stopping the run, it's going to be extremely difficult for the Patriots to stay in this one because I don't know how much success they're going to have on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Because that's pretty much where I'm like, I feel like the trenches are kind of the key to this game. And I think that makes a lot of sense when it comes to the fact that neither team is probably starting their long-term quarterback answer. So it's not going to be nearly as much pushing the ball down the field probably, which is why my next key matchup was going to be pretty much the same thing I said before, but this time the Patriots interior offensive line versus those Dolphins guys, because Miami's not been really stopped when it comes to getting interior pressure. They've been a really good team stopping the run, which I feel like has been a little overblown as like a weakness of theirs, when in reality they've been pretty decent. And I think that if you're going to have a team in the Patriots who's roughly middle of the pack when it comes to inside versus outside runs, they're a little below average when it comes to attempts in between the tackles, you still are going to want to stop a guy like Ramondre Stevenson if he's the starter. Antonio Gibson on the outside, I think more so if he's the starter. But the guys that Miami has up front in Calais Campbell, in Zach Sealer, in Deshaun Hand, who's had some really good reps, those are the guys I want to see kind of wreak havoc on this game, especially without a David Andrews. You really have an opportunity to get the New England Patriots in some obvious passing situations. And then that's where Miami's just been at their best. They're the number one team getting teams off the field on third down. And a lot of that's going to have to come from the interior, especially if you don't have Jalen Phillips, who now is out for the year. And you're going to be running a lot of Chop Robinson, a lot of Mo Camara, a lot of Emmanuel Ogbah out on that outside. It's really up to those guys in the middle to try to make plays and try to disrupt Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, we're on the same page once again. You made a bunch of good points. And more from a Patriots perspective, the thing I'm going to be looking for is how Layden Robinson or City So and then Michael Jordan are able to handle those inside guys for the Dolphins. Zach Sealer, I feel like we talk about it every time you're on here. I will tell anybody who listens, he's one of the most underrated defensive linemen in the NFL. He's off to a great start as a run defender and as a pass rusher from what I've seen. Deshaun Hand, I know he's not, the most explosive guy, but he's just supposed to be eating space and trying to make sure guys like David Long are free at the second level. And like you mentioned it with the edge guys, I think there's going to be a vulnerability for the Dolphins if the Patriots, they've been better at running outside zone, especially when they run it to the right. I think if they can get Mike and Wendell against one of those guys, that may create some soft edges for them to exploit. But then also for the interior, Nick Leverett, like how is he going to Calais Campbell. I don't know how I forgot to mention him. I know there was a play like a week or two ago where he deflected a pass and then Zach Sealer actually picked it off. Two of the three interceptions for the Dolphins, interestingly, are actually defensive linemen because Will Levis threw directly to Emmanuel Ogbah last week, which was insane. But like we said, this is going to be a game that's about the line of scrimmage. And I think for the Patriots, like I said, they got to run the ball at least 30 times, not necessarily just to get to the number. Because I know sometimes people conflate that number with, just because you ran it 30 times, you win. The reason that the win percentage is usually pretty high when teams are able to run 30 times is because it keeps the defense off balance. Where if you're running that often, one, you're probably controlling the pace of the game. You're probably close in the game because you can run that much. And it puts the defense in a position where they don't really know, is this a run? Are you running play action? Is it a play action? And then you're going to dump it off on a screen. That's been the thing the Patriots have struggled with because they're getting blown out. They've been blown out so early in the past 2 games. So they got to make sure they win the line of scrimmage, get the run game going, and don't put themselves, like you said, in those positions where they have to deal with the Dolphins on 3rd down. I'm also 100%. Kind of curious from your perspective, why have they been so good stopping the run, and have there been any vulnerabilities?
I think they've a lot of it does come down to those interior defensive linemen. I think have been absolutely phenomenal. Like Miami is just kind of letting them eat. They aren't. There are times where they are tasked with stopping gaps, and then you have guys like Jordan Brooks behind him, who Jordan Brooks has been like fantastic for his first 4 games in a Miami Dolphin uniform. David Long has been inconsistent, I think, when it comes to his ability, especially against the run. Like against the pass, you're not expecting necessarily a plus pass defender in David Long, but there have been a lot of times where it seems like he's guessing, and if he gets it right, it's getting blown up. But if he gets it wrong, you're going to see a huge gain, kind of like what happened in that Buffalo game where they rolled out an extra offensive lineman, kind of triple teamed Miami's defensive lineman. And then you're forced to get guys like Jordan Poyer, David Long, those guys kind of guessing at the second level. And that's where Miami's kind of been able to be exploited.
And you mentioned that jumbo package. The Patriots have been using that every week. It used to be Caden Wallace. He suffered a pretty tough injury, so it looks like it's going to be Zach Thomas, another guy they picked up on waivers after roster cuts. I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of duo. Same thing we saw against the Bengals, where they try to press the middle and then bounce it outside and really challenge the linebackers' discipline. And then hopefully, like I already said, outside zone, maybe some toss plays. We're seeing some more of those, but sounds like running down the middle is not going to be a great idea for either team, but obviously they're going to have to prove it on the field. Now we are going to wrap this up with our final key matchups each, but first, quick word from our friends over at Game Time. Be right back.
Levi's Stadium at San Francisco 49ers, Patriots versus Niners. Little as $115 right now on the Game Time app. Not too bad if you're making the trip out there. If you didn't buy your tickets yet, wait a little bit more, but use Game Time because you might be able to get an even lower price as kickoff approaches. Game Time is the best ticketing app out there. We use it all the time. Our own game viewings, our concert viewings, etc. And they have a new feature now called Game Time Picks that makes it easier to get tickets to your favorite teams and watch them play live. It filters out all the fluff and shows you only the incredible deals and great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through those thousands of tickets. They have super deals, they have awesome deals, they have great deals. And again, the app is super easy to use. You literally just go in, you search Patriots. I'm doing it right now while we're on here, Taylor. Dolphins at Patriots for the following week. Could be Drake May's first start, could have Tom Brady on the call. As little as $123 right now. And when you're in the app, you can click and look at your seat view and see what the game will look like right from your seat. So head over to Game Time today. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
Game time! All right, brother. What is your final key matchup? We'll share those before we get into our predictions.
This one, I think, kind of goes in the flow of the last two. It's going to be a lot of those Patriots receivers, running backs, and whoever is catching those underneath dump-off kind of passes that probably will have to be a bulk of this game plan against Miami's second-level defenders, be it those Jordan Brooks, David Long, now no Jordan Poyer very likely as he's missed the last 2 practices. I think those are my kind of big time. Those are the players I think from Miami. You might not see David Long. He's been limited. You might see him on a limited basis. So that might mean more Anthony Walker. Jordan Brooks is somebody who's made a lot of big time tackles. But at the same time, if they're throwing these little screens, little dump offs to a Ramondre Stevenson, to an Antonio Gibson, to a Demario Douglas, who is somebody who is probably the most explosive weapon in that short yardage on the Patriots, I think that it's going to come down to Miami making a lot of those rally tackles to the football. And when you take into account that some of the angles, specifically on the back end at safety, have not been the best to start the year when teams have gotten to that second level, that's where I think Miami can be exploited and has to clean things up. We saw each of the last couple of weeks. I mean, the play that Jalen Phillips got injured on, Jordan Poyer dives to go make the tackle, and the reason it's a broken tackle is because the angle's not great, and he's been somebody who has honestly very much struggled through these first 4 weeks of the season. And if he's not playing, maybe it's Marcus May, maybe it's a little bit of Elijah Campbell, but I think having those second level defenders rally to the football and not give up missed tackles is going to be huge, especially if New England is playing with any sort of negative game script and is having to throw the ball down the field.
Dude, we're reading each other's minds. This is kind of crazy. So this is the first time that it's not literally the same key matchup, but I'm basically saying the same thing for the other side of the ball. I've got Jelani Tavai versus Devon Achane because teams have been picking on Jelani Tavai a little bit. So in previous seasons, like last year especially, I think he was like one of PFF's highest graded coverage linebackers. A big reason for that is, one, when he just has to come downhill and tackle guys in space, he generally does a pretty good job. And if you try to throw over his head as an underneath defender, he does a great job elevating and getting his hand on it. But what teams are doing this season is they're attacking him more horizontally. So we saw against the Jets, Tyler Conklin had a shake route and completely got wide open over the middle of the field. Then last week, you saw the 49ers, a really well-executed play. They made it look like they were trying to pick Jelani Tavai to the flat, but then Jordan Mason broke back inside. Tavai looked like he was stuck in mud, and then it turned into what should have been a touchdown, if not for a penalty. So I think in Devon Achane, I think, isn't he like the second most targeted receiver for the Dolphins right now?
It's definitely up there. I mean, I could check individually, but I think that would be accurate. He's definitely one of the most targeted players for Miami. They put him literally everywhere. There are plays where he's lined up out wide, in the slot, in the backfield, doing some of that like little Shanahan motion where they've got him like stepping outside in a McCaffrey style plays, getting him those little pitch outs with blockers in space. He is everywhere.
Yeah, and that's terrifying because, like you said, if you have Jelani Tavai versus Devon Achane in space, if he catches it and Tavai can't make the tackle, or he just, because of the difference in explosiveness, he just can't bring the guy down, that's a guy who can house it. That scares the crap out of me, if I'm being totally honest. So I know, like, people talk about the cornerbacks, and honestly, we can get into that for the predictions because I feel like people are still going to be kind of curious how that matchup could go. But I really think that Jelani Tavai, if he gets one-on-one with Devon Achane, that's a matchup win for the Dolphins. Just got to make sure he's going to get his catches, he's going to get his targets, but you got to make sure you at least minimize the damage and don't let him loose like we saw last week on, again, what was almost a touchdown for Jordan Mason.
Yeah, and one note on Achane, if Raheem Mostert is playing, which he's been trending towards because I believe he's practiced in each of the last 2 weeks, or each of the last 2 days of practice leading into this week, that would mean more Devon Achane in that F-style role where he's kind of all over the place and more as like a pass-catching option, because a lot of what Miami has had to do with Achane with no Mostert these last 3 weeks is, kind of bring him between the tackles or make him that starting running back. They haven't really leaned on Jeff Wilson. Jalen Wright is somebody you can tell they don't have full confidence in, but Mostert, especially in week 1, was the guy that they kind of brought in to be either the between the tackles or at least a bulk of the carries for the running backs. And then Achane was somebody who they tried to mix in on some explosives, get him on a lot of those quick screens and get him out on those edges. So I wouldn't be shocked if you see Achane with less touches than maybe he's had in these last couple of weeks, but those touches are a lot more designed and less him getting 10 to 15 carries.
And we kind of touched on it before we get to the predictions. I do want to talk about the Dolphins wide receivers. So it sounds like we could see some pony personnel where you have the Mostert and Achane on the field. But when it comes to when the Dolphins have their 3 receivers out there, what should we expect the groupings to look like and where are guys going to be lining up?
I think you could see a lot of guys lining up in different spots. Miami clearly made Odell Beckham a priority And if he's playing, that is something that we haven't seen all year. I know that we're probably going to see a lighter version of the playbook because, again, Tyler Huntley's only going to have been here for about 3 weeks. But Miami really based a lot of their offensive decision-making this offseason on that 11 personnel and wanting to maximize those obvious passing situations, because that's really where they were not great last year. They couldn't really play from behind. They weren't coming from behind to win any games, and really they were getting stopped when they couldn't run as much motion. They couldn't catch you off guard with play action. So they really wanted to bring in a guy who could go win over the middle, and Odell Beckham Jr. I'm expecting him to be mostly the slot guy, but it is interesting to see like how much are they going to be willing to attack those outsides like they've been doing and having a guy like him block, because lately it's been a lot of Braxton Berrios blocking, and at Braxton Berrios' height of maybe 5'9",
old friend Braxton Berrios.
Yeah. You can imagine how that's been working out with him trying to block on the edge. No disrespect to him. He's working his tail off, but not exactly somebody who's going to have the size, especially when a lot of the NFL is moving towards these big nickel looks with all these safeties on the field. Like, he's just not somebody who has impacted the passing game as much as you'd like, or somebody who can really block out on the edge. So OBJ is a huge addition for this team, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him line up a lot in the slot and Miami try to keep Waddle especially being that main perimeter guy. Maybe they move Tyreek around here and there.
Okay. And then you touched on motion as well. Do you think we're going to see as much motion as we usually do from the Dolphins because Tyler Huntley's in? Because I know a lot of coaches sometimes want to keep it simple with those quarterbacks, and because motion takes so much timing and, coordination, it can be tough with a guy who doesn't have a ton of experience in the system to be able to operate with all of that.
Yeah, one of the really shocking things that I think I could count as like a negative for the Dolphins these last couple weeks without Tua is that the motion has not gone away at all. They have been running a ton of it. They've been trying to get set, running a lot of shifts. They had like 3 or 4 illegal shifts in the second half on last Monday night. They've been really undisciplined, and a lot of it comes down to the fact that Tyler Huntley is not exactly keyed in on the timing of some of these plays because, like I said, he's only been here for 2 weeks as of the last game. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Miami try to limit it a little bit more. But every time I say Miami's going to move in one direction with something, they seem to stick. And I'm not going to lie, the coaching has looked a little stubborn through these first 4 weeks of the season. So I wouldn't be shocked if they just keep trying to go with, running a same league high amount of motion.
And what would you like to see? I know you touched on how the coaching staff hasn't adapted to Tyler Huntley when you have situations like in Green Bay where Malik Willis played really well because the coaching staff changed the way they usually do things and catered to him. What would you like to see them do more with Huntley so he can actually be successful?
I think a lot of it comes down to getting back to some of the I think it was Robert Mays on the Athletic Football Show put it best when he was talking about the Saints. He was like, what they were doing through that first 2 weeks of the season was playing the hits of like 2017 and 18 Kyle Shanahan offenses, where it is so much under center, using your explosive receivers on play action concepts and getting back to like either running the ball between the tackles or really like heavy set outside zone football. And I think that Miami could very much get back to that style of offense, but they've been so siloed and like going out under the gun or in pistol. They're rarely ever under center. And I feel like if they could establish some sort of just inside ground game, not focused as much about getting teams, like there's so much trying to manipulate linebackers horizontally going on with like the crack tosses and the motion, that I feel like they haven't focused as much on getting those linebackers to creep up. And in a game like this, where you're probably going to have to run the ball successfully in order to win, I want to see more of trying to displace them and then winning with play action over the middle of the field, which we really haven't seen.
That's going to be interesting. I'll be on the lookout for that myself. But we're entering the end of the show. Let's get to some predictions. You can give a score. You don't have to. I generally stay away from scores because I feel like they just make me a little extra wrong. But if you give one, I'll return the favor. So no pressure, buddy. Score, no score. What do you think is going to happen in this game? And who's going to win?
This entire episode, I've been going back and forth in my head about how I feel like this is going to go. But it really does feel like we are, as Dolphins fans, as myself, the Dolphins have their back up against the wall in a way that they haven't in Mike McDaniel's whole tenure. They've been an early season success team. That's been very much memed and joked about online that they can't win in the cold, they can't win in December, they can't win against playoff teams, whatever it is. But this is the earliest in the year that they've kind of been figured out, so to speak. So it feels like either a big adjustment has to be made, or we're going to be looking at a situation where Mike McDaniel might give up play calling at some point, or we're going to be calling for some sort of change in that locker room. So my guess is Miami's going to bring out a little more of trying to establish a Shanahan style identity. Maybe this is just some wishful thinking, but I feel like some of the stuff that I've said, I feel like it kind of all came to a head last Monday night that things have to change. So I'm going to pick Miami. I still think it's going to be a close one, probably still low scoring, somewhere in like that 16-13, maybe 20-17 range. But yeah, I think Miami could win that by like about a field goal. But again, could be very wishful thinking on my part.
Yeah, just looking at Miami and where they're kind of headed, and it feels very dysfunctional. The Patriots are teetering on that territory as well. That's why I do think they're going to win this game. I think that they understand this is a prime opportunity. Devon Gotcha even said out loud that he feels like it's very winnable, the upcoming slate of games that they have. I think they need to get something going, especially before they face the Texans. That's kind of a speed bump there in terms of, yeah, you got some pretty ideal matchups, and then, oh my God, like a almost guaranteed playoff team. But yeah, I'm not super confident. I'll be honest about that, because I do know that Dolphins have done such a good job stopping the run. And I feel like that's the only way the Patriots are going to be able to move the ball with any kind of consistency. So I do predict the Patriots to win this one. Like you said, ugly game. It's not going to be very high scoring. But I am also curious, before I get you out of here, what have you seen from Anthony Weaver's defense? Does it look a lot like what we've seen in Baltimore and that whole coaching tree, or is he doing something a little different maybe you didn't expect?
I think it's been a lot of the Baltimore stuff. I think that the big thing that everyone was kind of looking for that kind of became the buzzword was like big nickel and Kyle Hamilton. But then again, not having Kyle Hamilton, like, the other 31 teams in the league, you're not going to see nearly as much of that. But I've liked a lot of the blitz stuff, a lot of simulated pressure stuff. Miami loves sending those linebackers, be it Jordan Brooks or David Long, because those are two guys who, regardless of what you think about them as any other part of their game, are amazing at getting downhill in that pass rush game. So I think that's been a kind of a lot of it up front. They've been willing to disguise on the back end. Honestly, Anthony Weaver has been my favorite part of watching Dolphins film through 4 weeks, which I guess is probably a low bar considering how how the team's performed. But at the same time, I think that's a guy who, if you get to December and Miami's even looking like they could be a playoff team, I would not be shocked to see him getting head coaching interviews. The way that the defense has looked bought in, even when the offense has not been able to produce, on top of the fact that the defense is producing really good numbers, I think that's somebody that honestly should probably get head coaching looks come this offseason.
Very interesting. Also, I know Jalen Ramsey wasn't happy about how he was being used last year. Does he seem happier with what it is now? It looked like he's really kind of sticking to the boundary, but obviously those numbers can kind of be distorted based on the game situation and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Ramsey specifically, I think one thing that he's happier about is that he has done a lot of traveling with receivers this year thus far. I know in week 1 it was Brian Thomas, and week 2 it was Keon Coleman. And I know that those aren't necessarily like the biggest names, both being rookies, but a lot of what Jalen Ramsey has done has been traveling with whoever that traditional X-style receiver is. And I think that was a lot of the issue under Fangio, is that you were getting a lot of Cater Kohu matched up with Stephon Diggs and not exactly being willing to adjust when teams are moving their number one receiver to the slot or moving him across the field. They were kind of just playing Ramsey as like the right side corner rather than letting him move around the field. And I think that's where he's been a lot better this year and a lot happier probably in his usage.
I was hoping the Patriots might be able to keep Jalen Polk away from him, because just based on how their receiver situations worked out, like last week, Jacoby went downfield 6 times, 5 of those were to Polk. I know it might sound crazy, but he is their number one threat, really, especially because Demario Douglas hasn't really been getting a lot of targets. Jacoby Brissett hinted, that really just flat out said that he had to get used to throwing to a shorter receiver this summer, and we all kind of laughed at it. But now Pop is like not getting a lot of targets, except for one game where it was very clear they were trying to feed him a lot. So that's why also Kendrick Bourne returned to practice from the PUP list, obviously tore his ACL last year in Miami. Him coming back this week would be massive, because I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's a huge one because I
Yeah.
feel like also his ability to even block from the slot if you want to try to get Miami in those situations with Miami's edge players and trying to get runs to the outside. I feel like that's been a lot of their dirty work when they come out and even some lighter personnel. So I honestly did not know he was practicing this week, and I think that could be a big pendulum shift when it comes to how that affects New England's identity, especially on the ground.
100%. And then Kendall Fuller, I know he was practicing today. He had a concussion. Looks like he's going to play because it was Storm Duck last week. Phenomenal name, by the way. Absolutely incredible. But if Kendrick Bourne, Fuller's a good cornerback, but those are two pros. I feel like they could at least battle it out. Obviously, hope we see more pop. But also, just for the guys that could return this week, just so you know, and everyone at home, just as a reminder, Sione Takitaki is also eligible. He's kind of like a Jelani Tavai clone in a way where he's that adjuster type where he'll play some weak side linebacker, but he'll also bump down to the line of scrimmage. Really, like Tavai, not really much of a pass rusher, more of a run defender, although he can do a little something as a blitzer off the ball. And then also Marte Mapu, which is huge because, like I said, Kyle Duggar's probably not going to play in this game. Jabril Peppers is dealing with a shoulder injury. He fell really hard after getting an interception last week, so we have no idea what his status is going to be like. And then behind them, there's Jalen Hawkins, who had a couple down plays. Del Pettis, an undrafted rookie who has played well, but still don't want him on the field necessarily when you have guys like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill who could take the top off with the Patriots playing a lot more quarters techniques. So Mapu can come back, improve on some of the discipline issues he had last year. Again, actually in Miami, there was that Tyreek Hill touchdown where he was partially responsible for biting on play action and giving it up on a bracket coverage. So those are the guys that are eligible. Marte Mapu probably going to be more of a tight end eraser, big nickel type if he does play. Not all those guys are going to play, but Gerard Mayo said it's possible that we will end up seeing them. But Tyler, don't want to take up any more of your time, buddy. This was so much fun. A pleasure as always seeing and talking to you. And before I let you go, please let the people know where they can find you, what great stuff you got coming down the pipeline that we should be looking out for.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. Obviously, this is so much fun. I mean, talking this kind of just talking X's and O's stuff, it really brings an excitement, especially for a Dolphins team that doesn't have much to be excited about as of right now. But yeah, as of where to find me, I mean, the main spot is at DeSena, as you see my last name, DeSena Sports on Twitter. Similarly on TikTok, Instagram, a lot of those places, I'm just kind of posting short form stuff, but a lot of it goes on Twitter anyway. That's kind of the main spot. And as for Dolphins specific content, if you want to check in on one of your AFC East rivals, Fins Focus MIA on Twitter would also be a big spot for that.
You're really doing fantastic work, buddy. Keep it up. Thank you so much for coming back on. And thank you all, as always, for watching. Now, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We will see you next time. Peace, y'all.